He's physically dominant. His feet are good. His range of passing is good, and we think he's going to be a great addition to our back line.
To the latest episode of Miami Total Futbol Radio, or as I like to say in Spanish every single pod, Miami Total Futbol Radio. I am your co-host, Franco Panizo, on this week's podcast, and joining me as always is none other than fellow Inter Miami beat writer, recent newsbreaker extraordinaire, and last but not least, David Beckham's long-lost cousin, Steve Brenner. Steve, how you doing? It's been almost a month since we've had a pod, so I'm sure there's been a lot going on in the Brenner household. How are you doing? How's everyone holding up over there?
Yeah, we're hanging in fine, thanks, man. It's been a busy-ish sort of time, isn't it? Not too much sort of, well, obviously clearly no matches, but stuff is slowly sort of moving around, with the team, and things are falling into place slightly. I think the guys are going to come back to preseason soon, so fingers crossed we're going to have some proper sort of stuff to report on. But there's been some movement for sure.
So you've just been hanging out at the household, not going out anywhere, not taking any trips to Las Vegas like somebody else I know?
No, I'd never do that thing during a global pandemic. No, I've just been kicking it in the Florida suburbs and actually started playing tennis. So there you go. So I'm really embracing my my middle-age-hood by playing tennis while you're going to Vegas. So where did it all go wrong?
Are you any good at tennis, or are we just not going to talk about that?
I'm okay. I'm a whole. It's early days. I've got the tools. I just need to try and just formulate a mental plan, and just deal with the pressure.
So that's just a diplomatic way of saying that you're not very good. Okay.
I'm not very good. I'm getting there. No, I'm getting there. As I said, building blocks. It's a great bunch of lads. Good team spirit, even though there's only one of them in my team. But, we're getting there slowly. I'm taking one day at a time right now.
You sound very much like Inter Miami in 2020. We'll move on from that. Before we get into everything, like you said, it's been a while since we've had a pod, but things have happened. There have been things that have transpired, although it's been a bit slower. We had that peak where they had all these announcements, Henderson, Neville, press conferences, a lot to chew on, a lot to dissect, and then since then there's been news here and there, but not something that's really headline grabbing. So we've decided now is the time to come back on. There's enough now to chew on and talk about, enough little nuggets that we can dissect and converse about. So we're going to get into all that. We're going to talk about the recent Ryan Shawcross signing. We're going to talk about your recent report where you laid down quite a bit of news, not only in terms of player personnel and potential future transfers, but also some interesting tactical or personnel ideas that we might see in 2021. We'll talk about the youth movement that Inter Miami is seemingly ready to adopt, and much more. Well, of course, we'll answer the questions at the end of the pod as well. But as always, if you haven't already, please give us a follow on all our social media accounts at Miami Total Futbol on YouTube and Facebook, at MIA Total Futbol on Twitter and Instagram. So, Steve, there's plenty to talk about now, so let's get to it. Alrighty, Steve. So, as we said, let's start with the recent signing. The signing that was announced over the weekend, English centerback, Ryan Shawcross. I'm sure you're probably more familiar with him than maybe anybody else in South Florida. So, Steve, give us a quick scouting report. What can we expect from Shawcross in Inter Miami colors? What kind of player is he? His playing style? Obviously, he's coming from Stoke City. Had a long career there, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, 13 years there. He served as captain for a bit. But if you can give us a little rundown of what he's like as a player and what he'll bring to Inter Miami in 2021.
Yeah, I mean, Ryan Shawcross played when Stoke was sort of in their pomp and had their most successful period of recent times, around sort of 2011 onwards. Tony Pulis, whose son Anthony is a part of the backroom staff for Inter Miami, so there's already a link there. Stoke were very uncompromising, very difficult place to play. You hear the old sort of could Messi do on a Tuesday night at Stoke. Very, very aggressive, not overly so, but defensive minded, but still had enough sort of flair in the team where they could cause problems. But that side was just very, very difficult to break down, and they would get in your faces and they would be nasty and they would just, really mix it up. And Shawcross was the captain, and was a key part, was the figurehead of that team, so he's had obviously great experience playing for those Tony Pulis teams. They weren't the most aesthetically pleasing on the eye. They were just very, very difficult to beat, and a guy like him, epitomised that really. We're seeing a link, as I'm sure we're going to talk about later on, is another guy that's sort of started his career at Manchester United. So he had that sort of feeling of what it's like to come through the ranks there, probably one of the biggest clubs in the world, alongside with Neville and Beckham and all these other guys. But just has a good solid career. Looking back over I totally forgot he only played for England once in 2012, brought on as a substitute against Sweden in the 74th minute. The following 16 minutes, Zlatan Ibrahimovic scored a hat-trick. He never played for England again. So he's a perennial one-cap wonder. But I just think he's a good, solid, experienced player. He's had these problems with injuries, but I just think that if we cast our minds back to last season when we were crying out for, when they were just short of cover sometimes, weren't they? And this just gives Phil Neville now just another option at the back. I find that he's like a Gonzalez Perez, that just good, solid, no nonsense, defender. And I just think with his experience and everything that he's been through in his career, I think he'll just add, a positive thing both on and off the pitch. The only question mark, and people I've spoken to in England did suggest, there's only people that have worked in Stoke and a couple of agents and different players, that his injury record hasn't been great in the last couple of years. He's 33, but if he can stay fit, then I'm pretty sure that he will be able to cope with what MLS will throw at him. That's not to say he's just going to walk in, he's going to boss it, but I just think someone of his experience and what he's done so far in his career, he should be a decent addition, as long as he stays fit.
So it's a good thing then that Zlatan Ibrahimovic is no longer in Major League Soccer, because Ryan Shawcross might have nightmares going up against him. So he's a big boy, right? He's 6'3", seems to be a very physical player. I admittedly have not seen much of him, but the scouting report is that he's good in the air, can attack set pieces, which is something that obviously we've talked quite a bit about on the show, something I brought up a lot in my coverage last year. Inter Miami was not very good on set pieces, and that hurt them in a lot of facets over the course of the year. So that's something that sporting director Chris Henderson talked about during the team's release, that he's good in the air, he's able to get on the end of things, and Henderson said he's looking forward to seeing Shawcross on attacking set pieces, because I'm pretty sure he didn't say this part, but I'm pretty sure that they've identified that set pieces were a weak point. They didn't score very many goals from set pieces last year, so I think he can bring all of that. But like you mentioned, and like I wrote today for SBIsoccer.com, there are a lot of questions about his health and what he has left in the tank. This is a player that has not played much in the past 2 seasons. He broke his fibula in July 2019 in a preseason match, and since then just hasn't really been the player that he once was. Hasn't been able to stay healthy. He's picked up niggling injuries here and there, and just hasn't seen a lot of the field. So I think there's every player is a risk, because you never know how they're going to pan out, but his risk is much higher. He's more of a gamble, in my opinion, because you just don't know what you're going to get. Obviously, that Miami's banking on him being as close to his best version of himself, but do you think he's going to get back to somewhat close to that level, given that his body's been breaking down over the past couple of years?
I mean, only time will tell. It's impossible to say, really. I mean, look, he probably wouldn't have. They haven't broken the bank to get him, have they? They haven't sort of splashed all their money, pinning it on him. It's a risk, yeah, just like any player is. But I just think his experience. He led Stoke to FA Cup final in 2011. Then the following year he played in Europe. So you can't buy that kind of experience, which the team was sort of lacking. Your BFF Reyes, although he was a good player, he was very, very young. So he was at the other end of his career. Could you rely on him? No. Could you probably rely on someone like Shawcross? Yes, probably, as long as he's fit. So we'll just have to wait and see. He's still got a couple of months to get himself, acclimatized. I'm sure he's been ticking over and getting himself ready. So, let's see. It's as physically demanding, I guess, as the Championship for sure. He's going to take in the humidity and different other factors like that. But we're doing good. It's certainly different temperature to Stoke in February for sure.
And something to keep an eye on, because I think that it's going to take him, if he can get back to the level he was at, I think it's going to take him a pretty good while. This is a player that, again, just this season, right before he mutually agreed to rip up his contract and part ways with Stoke City on Friday officially. This is a player that played twice for 41 minutes, a total of 41 minutes this season. He spent more time featuring for Stoke City's under-23 team, even though he's 33 years old, more than he did with the first team. And that's just this season. Last season, I think he played, hold on, let me pull it up here. He played 7 first-team games. So this is a player that hasn't seen a lot of first-team minutes. Obviously, the idea is that he's healthy now and that MLS will give him the opportunity to revitalize his career and maybe get back to somewhat close to the level he used to be at. But, I definitely have my questions and my concerns. If Inter Miami's expecting to rely on him over the course of the 2021 season as cover or as a potential rotational starter, I have questions if that's a good strategy, given the fact not only his age, but his recent injury history. It's not like he was injured earlier in his career and then he's had injuries, throughout the different years. This is something he's been dealing with injuries, and he hasn't been playing much and seeing the field for much of the past couple of years. It's been since the 2018-2019 season that he regularly saw the field. I think he played started 33 games and played 36 that season. So he's far removed from that. But if he can be anywhere close to what he used to be, then Inter Miami will have quite a center back on his hands and quite the depth at that position in 2021. And Steve, harping on that, I want to take this quote. He did an interview with Inter Miami's website, and he said this quote. Thought it was an interesting quote out of the bunch that he gave. Thought this was maybe the most interesting one. And he says, "I just want us to improve as a team, to improve myself. As a player, you never stop improving. I'm coming to a new country, a new club, a new league. There are so many challenges for me to try to accomplish and so many different questions I've got for myself, and can I achieve them? I'm hoping I can add to the team. There are loads of things that I'm sure there will be doubts about because it's a new country, new league. These are doubts that I'm sure in the coming weeks and months I'll prove people wrong." So he's coming with the mentality and a chip on his shoulder. He's got something to prove, which that bodes well for Inter Miami.
Absolutely, yeah. Why not? We sort of going over the same old ground here, but it's just like with Phil Neville. It's a great opportunity for him. It's an interesting project. It's a new franchise. Especially coming from England, you're coming from the frozen wastelands to sort of the South Florida sunshine. It's an attractive move for anyone. And a lot of MLS fans get sort of paranoid when you start mentioning about retirement leagues and veterans from Europe coming over for one last payday and stuff like that. But he's not geriatric. He's only 33. He's around about your age, not my age. He's going to say all those things anyway. But I just think from a personal point of view, it's a good opportunity for him. It's probably going to be his last move, isn't it? You would have thought. And we'll see what happens. Steven Gerrard only played for a year in LA and then came back and retired. You may only get 1 year out of him. We just we don't know. It depends. He's not going to flog himself to death just for the sake of it. He's probably made a decent career. He's had a decent career. Probably made a few dollars. So he's not desperate for him. But he's got 3 young kids. They've never lived outside England before. It's a great move. And then hopefully everything else goes well for him on the pitch. So yeah, I mean, it's all of these moves they're a gamble. There's no sure hit, is there? But if it goes well and he's fit, I think he could be a good asset.
Yeah, I mean, look, I have questions about him and what he can provide Inter Miami in 2021, and if it's a smart move to try to rely on someone like him with such an injury history. But I really like this quote from him. I think it's more than just the stock. I'm excited to be here, looking forward. Like, I think it shows that he wants to prove that he can get back to somewhat close to the level that he was at before the injuries. I mean, he says he wants to prove people wrong. He already has that chip or that mentality in his head, or that thought in his head. So I think he'll come in really motivated. I think he's gonna try to come in. It's not the type of veteran player that's going to come in and, we've seen it before in MLS where veteran players come in and they're just trying to write out one more contract and they don't necessarily give it their all and they're not fully committed. They're focused more on just enjoying the final chapter of their careers. I think with him, you're going to get full effort, maximum effort. We'll see if it's enough at the end of the day and if he can stay healthy. So
yeah, I mean, I was at covered NYCFC when Pirlo and Lampard were there for a season, and that had a stench of them just sort of seeing out the latter days of their career. But yeah, David Villa was there, and he was fantastic. So you just never know.
Quickly then, Steve, do you see him being a starter on this team, a rotational player? What do you think his role will be? I mean, for me, I think. To me, and this is just me, I mean, if I was calling the shots, I would still go with Nicolas Figal and Leandro Gonzalez-Pires as the starting center back tandem and have Shawcross as a rotational, third option, come in and spot duty here and there when necessary to give the other players either a rest or when they're, have yellow card accumulation or you need a third center back to help close out a game. I don't think he's a starter on this team, but that's me talking from my point of view. He has, like you said, Manchester United in his bloodline. He has played in England for a long time, so he might be more or might fit more of the characteristics that maybe Phil Neville wants out of a center back or out of his players. So I could also see him being a starter on this team if he's healthy and if he performs well enough. I wouldn't start him or make him a full-time starter, but I could see Phil Neville doing so. What do you think? Do you think Phil Neville will try to lean on him as a starter, or do you think he's more of a third center back option on this squad?
I think if he's going to be fit, he's going to start. I would have thought. I mean, it's natural, isn't it? Playing. I'm sure that Diego Alonso, when he was here, he favoured the players that he brought in, and it's the same. This is Phil Neville's first signing. He knows him. They're mixing the same sort of soccer circles from back home. You just mentioned the United lineage as well. I think if he's fit, he starts. But it's if he's fit. Is he fit? He was always sort of renowned for having a bit of pace about him as well. He could sort of do everything. He's probably lost a little bit of that maybe since he's been injured. But I think if he can regain fitness and be fit, I think he's going to start.
Okay, well, we'll see. The season starts in April, so not that much further away, and we'll see how the season pans out with regards to Shawcross. Definitely something to keep an eye on. We'll leave it there for now. We'll revisit it later on in the year, but we'll take a quick break, and we're going to come back to talk about your recent report on Inter Miami's transfer targets, and we'll talk about the preseason plans, Lewis Morgan may be playing centrally, and the recent moves from Inter Miami.
We're in constant talks with players, and there's a couple down the line that we're starting to gain some momentum on, and we'd like to get those over the finish line before we start in April.
All right, Steve, let's continue with your recent report for The Sun. You lay down a whole bunch of nuggets. Kudos to you for breaking that news and having those nuggets. I'll let you, as the man of the month, I was going to say man of the hour, but the man of the month, pick up from where you want to go. So you laid out this report. There's a lot in there. Obviously, Ryan Shawcross, that's a done deal. What else is in the pipeline for Inter Miami? Yeah,
I mean, Kieran Gibbs, fullback from West Brom, formerly of Arsenal, England under-21 international as well. He should be sort of following Shawcross over the pond, so to speak. I think that would be a good signing. Again, not wanted by West Brom anymore, but has a wealth of experience, slightly younger. Athletic, can get up and down, good on the ball, got a bit of pace about him. So I think that's a good sign. And I think fans may be sort of eye rolling now, saying, "Oh, he's only going back. Phil Neville's only going to England to get his players now." But I think They need a bit of sort of know-how and experience of playing in the arguably the best league in the world in the Premier League. So I think it'd be a useful addition. Like I say, it can only be an upgrade on what they had last year, with absolutely no disrespect to guys like Ben Sweat, who sort of tried who was solid, if unspectacular, but a good solid pro. I think maybe Kieran Gibbs will bring something else. Another guy whose sort of career was always tipped to sort of for superstardom, and then it never just kind of stalled in and out of Arsenal, and then sort of moved around. Ended up at West Brom. So
what kind of left back is he? Because that's the position that they need to fill. They want to address. So what kind of left back is he? Is he more of a stay-at-home left back? Does he get forward into the attack? Because that was Ben Sweat's playing style. He was able to have good soccer, good combination, could get forward into the attack and whip in crosses, and even at times get on the end of things and shoot on target. But defensively, he was a bit of a liability last year. So what kind of left back is Kieran Gibbs?
No, I think he's definitely certainly more comfortable on the ball. I think so. He'd be able to contribute more in the final third, and as well as sort of getting up and down the wing, really. So I just think he'll give an option, even if he could play three at the back and then he could push on and be a wing back. So I mean, it doesn't really matter. I just think it gives them another option of someone that's more competent on the ball, can maybe sort of influence things in the attacking areas rather than just defending. And then just again has that sort of experience of coming through the ranks at Arsenal. It's the same as like coming through at Man United or Real Madrid or Barcelona. These players have just got something about them. They wouldn't have been coming through those systems if they're not excellent players. So he probably grew up watching the likes of Ashley Cole and those sort of players coming through. So I just think he'll just offer them more in those sort of key areas. So it'd be interesting to see. But I'm told that there's no problems with it, but it hasn't been sealed for one reason or another. So we just have to wait and see on that one a little bit.
Yeah, Chris Henderson over the weekend in that release that Inter Miami sent out said that they're in talks down the line with a couple of players. Didn't say who they were, what positions they were, but he said that they would like to get him in before the season starts. From what you've heard, is Kieran Gibbs someone that could be with Inter Miami in a similar situation like Shawcross, where he, negates his contract and joins the MLS team before the season starts in April, or is this maybe more of a summer signing that he'll ride out his contract with West Brom and then he'll join once that season's over?
No, I mean, I think Inter Miami wanted to get him in as soon as possible, and I think his contract's up in the summer and he's free to leave anyway, and I don't think he's being used. And West Brom are a bit of a car crash right now. I think he'll be desperate to get away from them. They're going to get relegated. It doesn't look like it's too much fun to be playing under dear old Big Sam Allardyce. So I think they're keen to get him in now, but we're living in sort of strange times, and certainly monies and different things like that. So although I don't actually know, completely contradicting myself, what they would actually gain for keeping someone that's going to be out of contract in the summer, but we'll have to wait and see. But Miami want him in now, I think, because they need cover there, didn't they? They haven't really got too many options there, so it'd be an interesting one to see. So hopefully, fingers crossed, Phil can get him over the line. Now,
there's some other good nuggets you had in that report. One of them was Inter Miami was apparently in conversations with Alexandre Pato, who is now with Orlando City officially. So we won't touch on that one, but we will touch on the other two that you mentioned, which you wrote about, which were Tyler Miller. Inter Miami's reportedly after the goalkeeper, which is interesting because they already have 3 on the roster right now. And also Lewis Morgan may be playing centrally. Phil Neville may be looking at him as a central option. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the tactics and that thought process. What have you heard, and what do you think about Lewis Morgan playing centrally?
Well, yeah, I mean, the fact is he's actively looking for a left winger, so that indicates certainly that he sees Lewis Morgan as more centrally. And I think if you're really, really bored and want to listen to all the times we talked about Lewis Morgan playing centrally last season, we always said, didn't we, that we thought that he may be better just through the middle rather than sort of an out-and-out winger. Once he was asked to kept on tracking back by the arch pragmatist that was Diego Alonso, it kind of nullified him a bit. And in a team that didn't have many attacking threats at all, you were basically negating the best one you had in Lewis Morgan, because he was having to track back and do Ben Sweat's dirty work or whoever else it was. He wasn't always used as like a sort of an attacking fulcrum. So I think if he wants to play him now in the middle and then get someone else out wide, then that's mixing up completely what they had in the past. So he could be like a false 9 maybe, or a number 10 behind Higuain or something like that. He's good on the ball, and then he can always drift out wide and do stuff as well. He's great on dead balls and has got a decent cross on him as well. So interesting that he's that's an option. He could be used more centrally. It's effectively like getting a kind of a new player, really, depending on who they get on the left hand side.
I'm not a head coach. But I can only talk about what I see from the outside and just my opinion. I could see where someone wants to try to fit Lewis Morgan centrally, and maybe he has some qualities that could loan itself to playing there. Maybe as I wouldn't say a number 10, but maybe as a shadow striker, that can float behind the number 9 and maybe help create things in that way. But I think from what we saw last year, Lewis Morgan's best position is out wide. His speed, his ability to take people on the dribble, his penchant for whipping in a steady dose of crosses, I think that's his best spot out and out. And I think if you put him in the middle, you're taking him away from his best spot. Now, we saw a little bit of him centrally last year. There were flashes here and there. We know the team as a whole did not play great, so maybe on a team that's better, he can show more in the central position. But I don't know, man. I don't know if I agree with the idea of taking someone that proved to play at a very good level on the wing towards the middle. And I know you touched on him playing on the left. He did have some moments where he played on the left wing, but he was predominantly down the right side in 2020. And I thought he did a really good job there. Obviously, he was voted the MVP for the team for the season. I thought he was right up there with Leandro Gonzalez-Pires as the two best players on Inter Miami, personally. So I don't know. I don't know if I agree with putting him in the middle. That also raises a question to me of, what are they going to do with Rodolfo Pizarro? Are they looking to move him? Because where do you fit Rodolfo Pizarro if you're going to play Lewis Morgan in the middle? You're thinking about playing Lewis Morgan in the middle, and you're reportedly considering getting a left winger. So where does Rodolfo Pizarro fit in that whole picture? But yeah, I mean, so you're in agreement that it's a good idea or something worth testing out with Lewis Morgan? I
think that's the way that Phil Neville wants to use him is through the middle. It just depends, I guess, who's either side of him. Is he going to play centre midfield?
No. I didn't say what Phil Neville thinks. I'm asking you your opinion. Do you think it's a good idea? Steve Brenner, do you think it's a good idea to put Lewis Morgan in the middle? Are you in agreement with that idea? That tactical idea?
I think that he can play anywhere along midfield, really. I think he's good on the ball. He's quick. He's got an eye for a pass. He can shoot. I think, he's clearly spoken to him, and that's kind of indicated that's what he wants to do. So, I can... Who am I to doubt Phil Neville?
Listen, Lewis Morgan, to me, from his game, from what I've seen, is not someone that has a through ball in his game. He's not necessarily someone that's gonna break.
Hold on, didn't he have wasn't he leading? Didn't he get the most assists last year?
He got assists from the outside when he's whipping in balls and whipping in set pieces. That's not a player that has the vision through the middle. Where again, his strengths, his attributes are his speed, his ability to take people one-on-one. When you're playing in the middle, there's more bodies around you. You have to be quicker on the ball, make faster decisions. You don't have as much time to take people on the dribble. So it's a different role, and that's why I don't think taking him from where he strived last year and putting him in the middle is a good idea. It's an experiment, I guess, that they might try. We'll see how it goes. But I don't think that that's necessarily going to work out in his best interest or in Inter Miami's best interest, because I don't see him having the ability to have the vision and play balls in between lines. Not talking about whipping and cross from the outside. I'm talking about playing in between lines and connecting that and feeding the striker from central positions. But we'll see how Phil Neville approaches that. There were other moves that have happened. We've talked about what might happen, but there are moves that have happened, from signings to front office hires. We'll quickly just mention that Inter Miami, they hired Mark Prezant as the club's director of scouting and Sam Gregory as the director of analytics. So the front office continues to change and continues to be restructured. Those are the two latest hires. Now, in terms of player personnel, they re-signed Federico Higuain, not a huge surprise there. They recently signed draft pick Josh Penn, also probably not a surprise. We talked about how we see him as cover for the outside wing positions. And they also signed Dylan Castañeda, the goalkeeper from the USL team Fort Lauderdale CF, as well as academy players Edison Ascona and Ian Frey. Steve, out of all those moves, which one stood out the most to you?
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to say that although it's not exceedingly sort of sexy for the fans who want, the players, top players to come in, the signing of the head scout Preseason and the analytics guy just shows that how unhappy or just how it wasn't working last year for various reasons, which we've gone on and on about. They've totally come in and attempted to revamp the front office and the scouting network and the coaching and everything like that. So it's just a massive reboot again. And I just, these guys have come in. Preseason was a Man United's US scout. So again, there's that other link. They're doing things their own way, and it's got the Beckham sort of fingerprints all over it. But did they lose a year? Do you think by sort of Diego Alonso sort of stalling and the club just sort of not really going the places they wanted to go? So just the revamp of on and off the pitch just sort of shows that they've just had to rip everything up and start again. So how much grace period do they get for this now that they've restarted? Do we give them a season before questions start being asked? It was exactly the same questions that we were asking this time last year. So it's going to be it's interesting to see just the different direction they're going in after what was you'd have to admit a pretty disappointing first season.
I was surprised by the signing of Dylan Castañeda. I think that his signing made it pretty clear that they're probably going to stick with John McCarthy as the number one. Now, obviously, your report touched on Tyler Miller being an option that they're looking at. So if he is brought on board, I'd imagine it's a battle between him and John McCarthy for the number one spot. But right now, as of today, it looks like McCarthy will be that number one. But the most interesting thing to me was the signing of two more academy players in Edison Ascona and Ian Frey. Ascona, 17-year-old Dominican Republic national team player. He's been called up by them on a couple of occasions now and has debuted for them. And Ian Frey, who's of Coconut Creek, Florida, not far from where I grew up in South Florida. I think their signings, once again, and I know Inter Miami talked quite a bit about it, shows that they're ready to turn to some more youth players in the academy and try to bring them along and try to establish that identity and that pipeline of players that can eventually contribute to the first team. Phil Neville did say last month that that's one of his biggest goals is to have one of the young players step on the field and make their debut, one of the academy players step on the field and make their debut. Now, there's three academy players on the roster. Those two plus Felipe Valencia, who was the first one signed earlier this offseason. I'm curious to see how it all plays out. I think Ian Frey is probably the most ready to play. Obviously, he's the oldest one, but I think he's the most ready to play based on what I've heard about him and different reviews that I've heard about his skill set. Again, I don't expect them to see a lot of minutes in 2021, but if you ask me to bet on who I think would play, or who will see the most amount of time, I would say probably Ian Frey out of the three. But I'll repeat this, I don't think the three will see a boatload of minutes in 2021. Steve, what do you think about the youth movement, the academy players starting to come through and starting to be signed by Inter Miami?
No, exactly. Well, that's the other side of it, isn't it? Although we're talking about who they're going to bring in and what superstars could come through the door. It's vital that the young kids come through as well. Two local guys as well. And that's what they want to see. They want to save millions of dollars in the transfer market by producing their own kids, and that's the whole thing they've been banging on from the start, isn't it? We want to have players with South Florida in their blood and playing the Inter Miami way and all that sort of stuff. Although the Inter Miami way is kind of a little bit got lost in the weeds a bit, and they're having to sort of reboot. That's it. The young kids. That's what it's all about. So it's going to be interesting to see how how they get on. It's not easy. We saw last year when the younger guys came in. Could be, it's a difficult breeding ground for these guys. It's super physical, and they're coming up against experienced players. It's difficult, but they're going to be given a chance, I think, and then that's the key. It's one thing bringing in players on big wages or experienced players at the end of their career, but they've got to bring the young kids through as well. And Phil Neville and Beckham both said that's what they're here to do. So let's see what happens and see how much opportunity these guys get. But it's great. It's great for the local fans as well to have one of players that are one of their own.
So there's been a recent talking point. That's been a recent talking point from the club, from brass, is that they want to get these players into the first team and eventually have them contribute and be starters and establish that whole identity, which is something a lot of MLS teams say as they grow in the league. Now, this was interesting to me, and I am admittedly way more cynical and skeptical than you and probably most media members, but I don't know, this might ruffle some feathers, but I'm going to say it because it's what I think. When they were announced and Inter Miami sent out the video of their introductory interviews, they had a whole Q&A with both of them, Ian Frey and Edison Ascona. Normal, traditional introductory questions, but there was one that really stood out to me that I thought that made me raise my eyebrow. And they were both asked about the team's facilities. And I was like, that's a weird question or a different question to ask, young players coming through. Normally it's, who have you watched growing up? What are you looking to do with the first team? It's a dream come true. That type of thing. But I was curious that they asked these two local players about the facilities, and they both raved about the facilities and said, "Oh, it's what you need to be a professional player," and yada yada yada. A few days later, after that, David Beckham and Miami Mayor Francis Suarez were on an Instagram video in which they sat down and talked for like 15 minutes. I think it was called Cafecito or Coffee Talk, something along those lines. And they talked about a number of things with regards to Inter Miami, but they got to the point towards the end of it where I think there was the point they were trying to drive, because everything else they talked about had been visited or revisited already, where David Beckham was trying to sell the idea of, well, we've built this great facility in Fort Lauderdale, and now we want to get it done, in Miami. We want this stadium in Miami. So to me, it came off as, from within, internally, they're trying to push the academy, yes, because they want players to come in the first team and build the team that way, like you see around the world. But I also think that there's this push to try to get these local players involved because they have a vested interest in trying to show that they're part of the community, because they're trying to build a stadium in Miami. And that stadium we haven't heard much about in a good while. There hasn't been any real updates with regards to Miami Freedom Park. And I think Inter Miami is trying to push out this message saying, hey, we are fully embracing the community. We have signed players from the academy into the first team after 1 year. We've given them these facilities, which, again, is why maybe they asked these youngsters this question about facilities, which, again, I think is weird. Maybe you don't. I think it's a little bit odd. Have them say great, wonderful things about the facilities. We can do that in Fort Lauderdale, and we want to do that in Miami. And I think that's a push coming from Inter Miami. I don't know your thoughts on that. I mean, you can chime in or give me your 2 cents or not, but I think that they're really still trying to work on Miami Freedom Park. I think that's an undertone to that aspect of it, and I think they might still be a bit a ways away because it doesn't seem like there's been much progress as of late.
No, I mean, there's been no progress, and there won't be. Not with the economic sort of state of the world right now. People aren't going to start ploughing their money into real estate deals and stuff with everything being so, up in the air. Nothing has moved. In terms of the stadium, they're a million miles away from putting a first brick in the ground. Let's get that absolutely right, and it hasn't moved for months now. So that's a stalemate. Yeah, I mean, I guess in the end, the idea of moving to that beautiful business park, which is supposed to be like a gateway to Silicon Valley for South America, and then have a soccer stadium in it. That's the dream. But I mean, they're nowhere near that right now. But that's the party line, isn't it? Because make no mistake, they're not going to make much money out of being stuck in Fort Stuck. I mean, it's a great stadium and a brilliant training facility, but they're not going to make any extra money out of that. They need to move to Miami, to Mel Reese, where they will create this tech hub and hotels and restaurants, all that sort of stuff. But I think they're years away from doing that at this moment. So, they need to concentrate on what they've got right now, which is a great facility. And we don't know how inconvenient or convenient it's going to be for 20,000 people to get in and out of the stadium. We don't know that because we've only been in their stadium when there's been 2,000 people there. But me and you, we both sense that there's been interest in the club. It hasn't waned at all. People are still interested. They're still behind the team. So, until we get back to some sort of normality, we won't know the effects of playing in Fort Lauderdale. But that seems, having reported on it for 6 years, it now seems such a sort of back issue to think that they're going to suddenly start building a place in Miami. It's a pipe dream for sure right now.
Quickly, Steve, do you think I'm off base? Do you think I'm reaching with that? Do you think it's weird to ask young academy players about the facility, or do you think that's
what's weird about saying normal? Do you like the training ground? What's weird about that?
They don't have anything to compare the facilities to. They're not, this is their first step in the profession. I just think there was more. Again, I'm more cynical than you are. I think there was more to that than just being like, oh, hey, give us a soundbite on the facility. I get being like, hey, did you watch David Beckham play? Or, what's it like playing for or signing your first contract with your local team? But asking a question about the facilities, and then days later, and it's called Cafecito Talk. You can find it on at Mayor of Miami on Instagram. Francis Suarez and David Beckham talk about a bunch of stuff they've already talked about 100 times, and then they finish it off by talking about the commitment to the stadium and the facilities and all this. I don't know. I think there was more to it than that. There's something I've learned in covering soccer for what is it, 10, 11, 12 years now. There's always reasons for everything. And there's a reason why they asked about the facility. That's my opinion. That's my opinion.
About the facility because they want to say what a great training facility they've got, and it's an easy question to ask a young kid.
Who are they delivering that message to? Who is that message going to?
Oh man, you need to stop watching some conspiracy theory shows on. All right, and you need to calm down.
Okay, well we'll leave that part there, and we'll quickly transition to the preseason. Inter Miami is set to, I guess, officially begin preseason March 1st, but that's when the quarantine period begins for the team. The players have to quarantine for a week. They can do individual training sessions at the facility, but not able to do team training until March 8th. But that's literally next week. The start of it's next week, and the start of full team training is 2 weeks from now. So preseason's right around the corner. From what I've heard, the team is most likely going to be staying local. They will not be traveling anywhere like they did last year when they went to St. Pete and had a couple of friendlies up there. It'll mostly be in Fort Lauderdale at Inter Miami CF Stadium and at the training facility. So that'll be the plan as of now. Inter Miami may be able to start preseason earlier. Toronto FC has already begun their preseason preparations, so Inter Miami may be able to start earlier, but it depends on what MLS signs off on right now. MLS has to sign off on practically anything because of all the COVID-related matters. But we'll take another quick break. We're going to come back with our Q&A session and our final thoughts after this. Alrighty, Steve, Q&A time. Let's try to go through these as fast as possible. We know the process. We've done this for the better part of a year. I think this is almost a year anniversary since Miami Total Futbol Radio has come into existence. I think we've passed it actually at this point, but let's quickly go through these questions and answer a session. So the first one comes from Gabe P. Of the rumors of players we can add, which one are you more excited about? Also, do you have any information on the rumor about an academy player that had great prospects leaving the academy system? Do you have any info and ranking on the players that were added to the first team? So, a lot of questions there, Steve. Just answer the first one. What do you think? Which player are you most excited about that's either on the team now or in the works from what you've heard?
Well, I'm just interested to see what they're going to do with the the squad, or certainly the DPs, you know, that from all accounts, it sounds like everyone's come back to training and raring to go, and Phil Neville's been impressed with them and all this sort of stuff. But there is a question mark over Pizarro for sure, and Pellegrini. I think Higuain is a lock, isn't he? Really, but it's going to be interesting to see. I'd like them maybe to cut their losses on Pizarro, and then maybe use that money to bring in someone else that you think would probably be more effective, hit the ground running. So. Yeah, we'll just have to wait and see. But I do think, if anything, we talked about Kieran Gibbs. If he comes in, I think that would be a great signing, because I just think they needed a bit more athleticism, down at fullback, and he could contribute attacking wise as well. So I'm not going to, they're two defensive players with him and Ryan Shawcross. So I hope they can maybe shuffle the pack a little bit and maybe bring some more attacking talent in, but they're going to have to get rid of one of the DPs. I know we touched on Pato before, but he was after around sort of $300,000-$400,000 a year, which is quite a lot in MLS terms if you're not a DP. So let's see how he can cut his cloth.
So I'm gonna give a more diplomatic answer on this one. Incomplete. I don't. There's still moves that need to be made. A lot of the moves that have been made now are for younger players or players in the USL team, so not much to go off of. Ryan Shawcross, obviously the first international signing they've made this offseason. Kieran Gibbs is supposedly in line to be next, but there's other moves further in the pipeline, so I'll reserve, or I'll withhold my answer for now. Next question comes from Eric. And he says, any idea on the undisclosed, he puts that in quotation marks, South American player GM Henderson alluded to? Any guesses? And what position would you like to see our next free agent acquisition? Lastly, what do you guys think of our chances of signing Kieran Gibbs? Well, we touched on Kieran Gibbs quite a bit. I'll address the part of what position would we like to see, or would I like to see the team address next. I think, again, I laid this out at the beginning of the offseason. I stick with it. I still think they need a central midfielder. Obviously, they also need a left winger, but I think central midfielder is a key position that they need to fill. Help you free up Blaise Matuidi maybe a little bit more, give you a more traditional number 6 that can give you that range, that bite, and that tenacity and physicality to help blanket the back line. But yes, a left midfielder is also, or a left winger is also very much needed given the personnel available right now.
Yeah, absolutely. That was the whole conversation, was it, last year? Where's the creativity? If Pizarro wasn't really doing it, which he didn't really do it for most of the time, we just need that guy just to give the front striker, Higuain, if that's him, or Lewis Morgan, or whoever, give him the chance. I think if they put the ball in areas where Higuain gets a sniff of goal, he's going to score. So it's just can they get the ball to him, and can they have someone just to unlock those pretty miserly defenses up and down in MLS. It's not easy. They just need someone that could just come in, no mucking about, and just get straight to it. So I want to see some sort of creative midfielder for sure. That's what they desperately need, because you've got Matuidi there that can do the anchor work, do the donkey work, and run up and down and break things up. But you just need that creativity. That is what that's what killed them last year. That lack of it.
If and when Rodolfo Pizarro scores his first goal this season, I fully expect him to take off his shirt and have a shirt underneath that says, "Screw you, long lost David Beckham's cousin Steve Brenner." I 100% expect that to happen, because you have been dogging him for months now. Months. Next question comes from Carlos Segovia. What do we know about Pellegrini being removed from DP? I'll add this other question as well, because it's kind of intertwined. It's from Fighting Herons. Do you see Inter Miami taking advantage of the new under-22 salary cap relief rules this season? Can Pellegrini be shifted into this designation to open up a DP slot? If Inter Miami can buy down Pellegrini's contract and put him into that new threshold, that new initiative, the under-22, I think they should. Maybe they won't do it right now, because there's more options for players to be signed from abroad in the summer, especially after the potential Euros and Copa America, if they happen. I think you have more options to sign players in the summer than you do in the winter, when a lot of seasons are still ongoing. Doesn't mean that they couldn't go out and sign someone now, but I think that they might hold off on that until the summertime, if they can do it. Now, I'm not sure, again, the rules are ever changing. This is a new initiative, so I'm not sure if a DP from last year that's under that age bracket can be removed, if you can buy down his cap hit. and move the money around to make it work that way, that's something that has to still TBD. We're going to look into that, continue to look into that, because they haven't gotten a clear answer on that. But I think if they can do that, then they probably will. I think it just most likely won't be until the summer, because you can get a real impact player with another DP slot and maybe keep Pellegrini in that, theoretically speaking, in that under 22 threshold initiative.
Yeah, they need to sort it out, didn't it? Because for whatever reason last year it wasn't working with the DPs that they had. Higuain was great, but Pizarro and Pellegrini just didn't happen for them. Pellegrini cut a bit more slack, a young kid living in a foreign country for the first time. He showed flashes of it, didn't it? But again, this is Phil Neville's job, isn't it, to try and coax the best out of these players. And I'm sure he would have seen it already in training enough. I'm sure Chris Henderson was watching from afar at what was happening in Miami last year. So he'll have a more sort of, not cultured, but he'll have a maybe a deeper view on what is needed where. So I think we haven't really touched on Chris Henderson, pulling the strings transfer wise, but he'll know what's needed to compete in this league, and his views. We haven't really had a chance to speak to him yet, but I was interested just to speak to him and ask him, what did you think of Miami and in particular the supposedly star players last year, because it didn't work, did it? So his input, I think, is going to be key in all of this.
I think, listen, I don't know if Pellegrini will cut it and be an every game starter this season. I don't know if he'll ever be that for Inter Miami. He'll have to prove that on the field. I do think he'll have a slightly better year this season, at least a slightly better year this season, because, like I've mentioned in other recent pods, the team as a whole just didn't work last year. Once the team as a whole can improve and play and function better as a group, which I think that they will under Phil Neville, then that should help raise individual performances. When the collective plays better, the individual performances perform better, and vice versa. So I think Pellegrini will have a better season than he had last year. Whether that's good enough for how much they pay for him, we'll find out. Last question comes from Atlante Herons. What are the chances of a preseason tournament with clubs from Latin America happening in a post-COVID world? I think it's definitely a possibility. Not this year, maybe not next year, but I think at some point, if we're talking ever, and ever's a long time, Don Garber's favorite line, I think absolutely that'll be something that they explore and they try to do, because it's been talked about plenty, not only from Inter Miami staff and brass, but from MLS officials, about how Inter Miami is this team that's the gateway to Americas. The city's the gateway to the Americas, and the team helps with that regard. And so I fully would expect at some point for there to be a preseason tournament with some South American teams, and they'll name it something like the Inter Miami Cup or the South Florida, whatever they come up with. I fully expect that to happen at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. It has been interesting. They kind of pivoted away from this sort of South American, sort of input in the club, but nothing will take away from the fact that the Hispanic roots of the fans and everything that Miami is about, that's always going to be an integral part of the club. And that would be amazing. And it'd be great. Although the calendars kind of don't, the calendars, world football calendars don't always align with MLS. So I don't know when it would be. It would have to be in the summer, in the middle of the season, I guess. You
can make it work. You can. There's certain leagues that don't start right away. Now, obviously, we're talking about in a normal year, normal circumstances, where Inter Miami would start preseason end of January. So in that window, you could probably get a South American or a couple of South American teams to come up and maybe play a little mini tournament. But I mean, again, we're talking down the line. It's not going to happen this offseason, obviously. No,
absolutely not. No way. But definitely in the future, of course, teams are going to come, and you have the ICC tournament in the summer. Where that will some of the biggest clubs in the world come and play. So I would definitely expect the likes of River Plate or Boca Juniors or any of those teams, big teams from Mexico, to come down and play. But we're it's just logistical nightmares right now, and it's so difficult to try and sort these things out when everything is just so uncertain right now.
Okay, Steve. So that does it for the Q&A session. Give us your final thought. I'll give mine, and then we can wrap it up.
Yeah, no, I just, things are moving. They've pivoted going in a different direction. They're pulling in, front office staff from Europe. They're bringing players in from Europe. They're not going to forget their sort of Hispanic, Latino, South American roots, whatever. But the changes are being made now. Is going to be key, I think, in the next few weeks to see what they're going to do with the DPs and how else they can bolster a squad and try and get them to be a far more effective unit. But I just think certainly with those early signings that he's brought in and the messages that we're getting from sort of the coaching staff, what Phil Neville's doing, I think it's going to be a more exciting product on the pitch. Fingers crossed. Let's hope so, and I haven't cursed him before he's even kicked a ball.
I'm curious about the dynamic that happens now with the South American players that were in from last year, and now with the English influence that's coming in. I'm curious to see how that dynamic plays out. My final thought is we have seen leaked images of Inter Miami's apparent new road jersey, the new black jersey for 2021. There's an official unveiling that's happening this week on Saturday at the Inter Miami CF Stadium. Based on what we've seen, and again, Steve, I don't know if you've seen it and you want to chime in really quickly, but based on what we've seen, I think it's an upgrade from what we saw last year. Still think it's a tad too safe. It's a black. You can find the images of the jersey on at Miami Total Futbol's Instagram. I think it's still a bit too safe. It's predominantly black. There's still no sponsor yet on the jersey. They have 3 pink horizontal lines going down the shoulders, traditional Adidas look, unlike last year that it was 3 vertical Adidas lines going down just one shoulder. So a more traditional Adidas look, has some palms ingrained into the body of the jersey. It's hard to see from afar, but up close you can see it. Think it's an upgrade from last year, a step in the right direction. There's the more traditional pink on the jersey, but I still think it's too safe. Not enough pink. Maybe if they pair it with pink shorts, it'll look great, but still too safe of a top in my opinion. Still too conservative in that way.
You're criticising pink stripes and shirts. I think it's maybe time we just call it.
Listen,
call it a day.
Jersey opinions are a hot topic in the world of soccer, all right, or in the world of football, whatever you want to call it. People care about what jerseys look like. I'm a jersey guy. I'm big into the jersey looks. Hey, if you're not, that's cool. But
it's just another excuse to rinse more money out of the poor paying public who spend their lives trying to follow a team, and then every year they bring out a new kit, so you have to spend more money. No, just one kit, just get it done. Plain, number on the back, be done.
All the more reason why the look matters, because people are spending their money on it. I think this one's an upgrade, but there's room for improvement still. That does it for this week's podcast. Don't forget to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. If you haven't already, we would really appreciate it. And again, give us a follow if you haven't already on our social media channels. We provide regular content on an almost daily basis on all the channels. But that does it for this week's pod. We'll be back again next week when preseason unofficially starts for Inter Miami, and we'll have plenty to talk about, I'm sure. For Steve Brenner, I'm Franco Panizo. We'll see you guys next week.